I can't help feeling that I've been robbed and that we're all being robbed and lied to. Perhaps it's a feeling that you'll share. I discussed the Rachel Reeves "Has she lied to us?" question on my Black Belt Secrets video I released this morning. I'll link that below. Do go and watch that. But as I say, I can't help feeling that I've been robbed. And it's not just the £6 billion spent on the asylum system, the billions of pounds that are sent overseas on other projects, which includes hundreds of millions of pounds to other police forces around the world, even though our own police forces are underfunded and they don't turn up and sort things out on our own streets when they desperately really should go and sort those things out. And in the recent budget on Wednesday of last week, what amounts to about £16 billion in welfare payments, which includes an uplift of several billion pounds to remove the 2-child cap. Now, I've said with the caveat, I always caveat because these things are never entirely one thing. I'm not against lifting children out of poverty, but that doesn't translate into me genuinely believing that so many pounds a week is going to lift those children out of poverty, or that everybody else should be paying for it. Of course, I think we should deal with that as an issue, but we should be looking for the money elsewhere rather than taking it off taxpayers. But the big point is that I feel that we've been robbed because I feel that what we've been told was dishonest and that it was all a reason, a fabricated disaster, a fabricated weak economy, even though it transpires the black hole didn't exist and the information, it appears, was disingenuous. And therefore, it's been used as an excuse to raid taxpayers by freezing rates and so on. Now, I want to show you something which a little bit different from my normal videos, but I think this absolutely encapsulates it perfectly. And it's credit to Alan Smith here on X. So you can go and find that. Do follow Alan if you like this little post by him. But I felt that this absolutely captures what's going on here and puts it in another perspective. Now, the caveats as I read this is obviously a little story designed to represent how people are paying taxes, some paying, some not paying, and so on. The caveats, of course, is that where it's mentioned that it's free, of course, that means it's taxpayer funded. And where it refers to people leaving, that is obviously the wealthy exodus from the UK, with more people leaving the UK than they have, I think, in history. But more about that on my Money channel, perhaps, and I'll look into the details of that. But let me read you this, because I find this absolutely encapsulates what's really going on here. Doubtless some people in the comments will challenge it, but challenge away. I probably won't read it. There's thousands of comments. But let me read this to you. Alan says, suppose that once a week, 10 men go out for a beer, and the bill for all 10 comes to £100. This obviously to make the numbers easier. If they paid their bill in the way that we pay our taxes, it would go something like this. The first 4 men, the poorest of them, would pay nothing. The 5th would pay £1. The 6th would pay £3. The 7th would pay £7. The 8th would pay £12. And the 9th would pay £18, obviously with the wealthiest paying the most. Obviously, the beers representing everything that we have as a society, and the poorest not paying anything because they're on benefits and so on. Let's read on. The 10th man, the richest, would pay £59. So that's how these 10 men are paying for their beer, and obviously metaphorically representing how we as a society are paying for things the way that we pay our taxes. And I've checked this out. Mathematically, this sort of works out. Again, some people can argue this out in the comments as to how entirely accurate it is, but it's a picture nonetheless. So argue that in the comments. So what they've decided to do, the 10 men that drank their beer at the bar every week and seemed quite happy with the arrangement until one day the owner, the government presumably, caused them a little problem. Said that since you were all such good customers, he said, I'm going to reduce the cost of your weekly beer by £20. And then the drinks for 10 men would now cost just £80. The group still wanted to pay their bill in the way that we pay our taxes, so the first 4 men were unaffected. They would drink for free. But what about the other 6 men? Well, those are the paying customers. How would they divide the £20 windfall so that everyone would get their fair share? Well, they realised that 20 divided by 6 is 3.33. So if they subtracted that from everybody's share, then not only would the first 4 men still be drinking for free, but the 5th and 6th men would each end up being paid to drink his beer. So the bar owner suggested that it'd be fairer to reduce each man's bill by a higher percentage. They decided to follow the principle of the tax system that they'd been using and proceeded to work out the amounts they suggested each would have to pay. And so now the 5th man, like the first 4, now paid nothing. So 100% saving. The 6th man now paid £2 instead of 3, a 33% saving. The 7th man paid 5 instead of 7, a 28% saving. The 8th man now paid 9 instead of 12, a 25% saving. The 9th man paid 14 instead of 18. And the 10th man paid £49 instead of £59. Each of the last 6 was better off than before, with the first 4 continuing to drink for free. But once outside the bar, the men began to compare their savings. I only got £1 out of the £20 saving, declared the 6th man. He pointed to the 10th man, but he got £10. Yeah, that's right, exclaimed the 5th man. I only saved £1 too. It's unfair that he got 10 times more benefit than me. That's true, shouted the 7th man. Why would he get £10 back? I only got 2. The wealthiest gets all the breaks. You see where we're going with this now. Wait a minute, yelled the first 4 men. We didn't get anything at all. This new system exploits the poor, even though they've been drinking for free. The 9 men surrounded the 10th man and beat him up. The next week, the 10th man didn't show up for drinks, so the 9 sat down and had their beers without him. But when it came to the bill, they discovered something important. They don't have enough money between them all to pay for even half the bill. And that's how it works. Tax them too much and attack them for being wealthy, and they just might not show up anymore. In fact, they might start drinking overseas, where the atmosphere is somewhat friendlier. For those who understand, no explanation is needed. From those who don't understand, no explanation is possible. So I think that perfectly encapsulates what's going on in the UK. And I've just noticed that this script, I think, was taken from another YouTube video, which I'll check if it is. I'll link it below so you can go and watch the original there. Now, this perfectly encapsulates what's going on. Now, of course, there's going to be a huge amount of debate about various things, which I will, to be fair, explain why I think in just a moment. You can debate that to your heart's content in the comment section below. The most common arguments come up are that obviously the 10th man, the wealthiest man, is the one that owns everything, and people will argue that he is the one who is benefiting from the people at the bottom, who's being paid for by all the people in between. But again, that doesn't change the fact that if the 10th person leaves, as there is an exodus of wealthy people in the UK at the moment, I'll pull those statistics up. But if that person leaves, they take with them everything that they've built. We've had billionaires leaving the UK just recently. Now, projections from Henley and Partners for 2025's report suggest that there's an estimated 16,500 millionaires leaving the UK in 2025, along with several billionaires as well. Now, there are also some sort of moral arguments being made here as well, such as in Fortune.com here. More millionaires have left the UK than in any other nation, according to the Henley Private Wealth Migration Report of 2025. About 16,500 millionaires uprooted this year, totaling around 92 billion, translating into about 9% reduction on the UK's millionaire population over the last decade, but argues that there is a moral responsibility or a social responsibility to invest in your country. So that I would challenge as follows. That might well be the case if everything was equal. Like everything else, all things being equal, you can make perfectly sound moral arguments. We should do this, we should do that. Now, if everything was equal and everything was fair, as a taxpayer myself, I pay a fairly hefty chunk of tax. As a taxpayer, I don't object that that does go to help and fund everything that we really should help and fund, and those people that we should be bringing out of poverty. And it should be going towards things such as ending homelessness. If I knew that my tax money was going to end homelessness and things like that, absolutely, I have no objection to that whatsoever. Where I do draw objection is where we have what I think is disingenuous statements being made, and to the point where arguably they are flat out dishonest, based on conflicting information. Again, my secrets video, I'll link it below. Go and watch it. You'll see exactly what I mean. Based on all of that, I do object that if we are being misled as a reason to then increase taxes, to end up paying more taxes, and also the VAT on school fees. Some people, I think, might get upset that I've been quite vocal about the VAT on school fees, but I absolutely think it is abhorrent to be taxing private schools because they just wanted to tax private schools. There's no other explanation. The Supreme Court found that that was infringing on the right to education, particularly in respect of SEND children, but they did it anyway. The Supreme Court said, but it's just a government policy. So all of these things, this little story that I've just read to you, all of these things are a matter of policy. So everything being equal is one thing, but if you're being lied to or it's being wasted and squandered, sent abroad to help other people, we are sending, I'm not going to name countries in this particular video, but we are sending hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds in support and aid and development projects to all sorts of other countries all over the world, when our own country here is in desperate need of repair and revitalization. And that goes for the NHS, it goes for the legal system, everything. I'll give you a little story. This is the legal system, how I think the legal system is just not working properly. Now, to appeal, let's say to appeal a county court judgment, first of all, you cannot appeal as of right. You need permission to appeal. You can either ask for permission on the day, which you usually won't get, or you can apply with evidence later on with grounds of appeal, and you can send that in. And you've just got 21 days to do so. Now, ordinarily, you would need the full transcript of a judgment to appeal the judgment because you need to point to it. Unless you've got a barrister there taking an extempore note of the judgment so you can at least refer to what was said in the judgment, which is better than nothing. Doesn't replace the transcript, but it's better than nothing. So we sent off straight away for the full transcript, and we've still not had it back. The deadline for the appeal expired a couple of days ago. So it's a good thing that we actually sent in the appellant's notice beforehand with a reference to what was said in the judgment from an extempore judgment, not the full transcript. So it's not ideal, but we've done it anyway. And we've only just, I think yesterday, had the notice that this has been actually lodged and served on the other party. But that was literally after the deadline expired. So had we waited for the transcript upon which we should make, a proper appeal, we'd be out of time. And then we'd be applying for permission to appeal out of time, which, again, by default, you usually won't get unless there's a good reason. The good reason is the transcript didn't come through. That would be the good reason. But then that's another application and another few months down the line before you get a response to that. Ultimately, it may still then fail because you're out of time. So, and that's just a simple judgment. And so the system doesn't work. It is underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced, and it simply doesn't work. And this is just over a little bit of money that we're filing this appeal for. This is not somebody's freedom. We've had cases that have taken 5 years to resolve and resolved into a not guilty, but because of the criminal nature of the case, that person was restricted from seeing their children for the full 5 years because the family court said, no, we're not going to make any orders while there's this allegation of criminal nature outstanding. So 5 years of the children's life, that person missed out on because the system doesn't work. It's underfunded, it's understaffed, it's under-resourced, and it simply doesn't work. So coming full circle, this is why I object to being misled about what's going on to then plunder the taxes, to then pay it back into other areas where it's highly contentious. And particularly when you take that story there, whichever side that you fall on, You can debate that story in the comments. There are arguments for and against, which is why it will cause such a debate. There are arguments why it's wrong, and there are arguments as to why it's absolutely spot on with what happens. But the fact of the matter, and at the end of the day, the fact is that wealthy individuals, high net worth individuals will leave the UK because they feel they're being robbed and lied to. And they feel that it is not a safe place to build a business because they're going to be taxed to the hilt. They're going to be taxed unfairly. They're going to be lied to whilst they're being taxed. And ultimately, there is virtually no time in history when increasing taxes leads to increased growth. It just doesn't happen. So that's my sentiment for today. I just thought I'd share that with you along with some thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.